I want to talk to you informally for just a few minutes about positive self-image and positive self-motivation. But I promise you that I'm like the man who said, I don't let my subject get in the way of what I want to say. So I'll be talking about principally positive self-image and positive self-motivation. Now, my philosophy I have branded the science of living. Science coming from the original Greek word gnoskai or gnoski, depending upon which province of Greece you're from. Gnoskai meaning to know. So then the science of living, as I call it, means to know how to live. And this is what I deal with, not so much religious dogmas and doctrines and so on. One unique thing about my type of evangelism is that I do not attempt to convert anyone to any particular form of organized religion. My only aim is to try to convert the individual to believe in himself, to believe in the God, the divinity, which resides in his own being. And whatever your philosophical or religious background, when you believe in yourself, this makes you a better person. And I say it this way sometimes. I believe in God, therefore I believe in myself. To me, there's really no difference in the individual believing in himself and believing in God. I just don't think that a person believes in God correctly until he believes in himself. And when you believe in the God that is within you, this becomes a practical kind of faith and belief. Also, my teaching is a form of positive self-image psychology. It teaches the individual to know himself. Over the door of the temple at Adelphi are the immortal words, "Man, know thyself." And many times I've made the statement that an individual knows nothing until he knows himself. And since I'm here in the academic community tonight, I would like to express a concern which I've had the privilege to express at Harvard Medical School and also at the University of Alabama the earlier part of this year. Many times I'm very much concerned about people who may go all the way through the formal academic process without really getting to know themselves. And I'm not going to ask you to answer out loudly, but I'm going to ask you to sort of probe your own mind and cross-examine yourself within your own mind for a moment. And ask yourself the question in the silence of your own soul, do I know who I am? Ask yourself that in the silence of your own soul. And in my philosophy and practice, I teach the individual to relate to himself correctly and positively. And many people say to me, well, Reverend Ike, what good is this teaching of individual self-knowledge going to do for society? And I usually reply that the individual is the first unit of society. Society is made up of individuals, and society cannot be better than the individuals of which it is made up. And before a person can get along with society and in the world, he must first learn how to get along with himself. And I'm going to tell you this, and I use it for a test on myself many times. If you find out that you're always unsuccessful in getting along with other people, the trouble is not so much other people, the trouble is you. And I have a new way of dealing with people. When I have problems with people from time to time, but you know, when I have problems with people, I don't any longer say, what's the matter with him or what's the matter with her? I go to myself and I say, what's the matter with me? And I straighten myself out. And in straightening my own mind out, in coming to peace with myself, within myself, then I come to peace with those people that I had been having a problem with. You try that. Perhaps I'll ask for you to probe your minds again for a moment and give you something to practice. Perhaps some of us here, most of us here, I'm sure, from time to time, there are problem people who come along in our lives. If you have some problem people in your lives tonight, I tell you what you do. Why don't you try going within yourself and coming to peace with yourself and see what happens to those other people. You'd be surprised. This is a sort of new way of relating to other people, by relating to yourself correctly. I also teach people what I call self-mastery. And in teaching people self-mastery, we train the individual to be master of things instead of letting things become his master. The words of the poet says, I'm the master of my fate and the captain of my soul. Sometimes I also call my philosophy mind science, because we teach the individual how to use his own mind power to be what he wants to be, to do what he wants to do, and to have what he wants to have. And here again, some of my very religious friends will say to me, well, Reverend Ike, you're talking about mind power. What about God? I say to you that mind power is God power. That's what I say, because God is the mind power which is within the self-awareness of each individual. And when you learn how to work your mind, then everything gets easier. Mind power is God power. If you want to be something, the way to become that is to define yourself as that. I want to say it again, slowly and perhaps somewhat redundantly. When I studied theology and for the ministry and so on, I was taught homiletics and hermeneutics and so on. But I discovered that I'm dealing with the subconscious mind, and the subconscious mind learns by repetition, and so I'm purposely repetitious many times. If you want to be something, the way to become what you want to be is to define yourself as the one who is already that which you wish to be. Those of you who are here in various courses of study at the University Center, I'm sure that you're here mostly because at some point or the other in your mind, you defined yourself as a minister or a teacher or a social worker or whatever you wanted to be. And after defining yourself as being that which you wanted to be, you begin to cooperate with that vision. And the way to do what you want to do successfully is to, first of all, define yourself as the one who is doing what you want to do. The way to have what you want to have is to define yourself as the person who is already having that which he wants to have. The Bible calls this telling the end from the beginning. And we teach many different techniques to help a person define that which he wants to be, to do, and to have. And one of my favorite techniques is called the technique of visualization. We teach people to go within what I call the transliminal area of the mind and actually see themselves being, doing, and having the good which they want to have. And of course, this is strictly in that good old book also, because the Bible says, where there is no vision, the people perish. And what does that mean? It means that if you cannot see yourself being what you want to be, you will not be it. If you cannot see yourself doing the good you wish to do, you will not be able to do it. If you cannot see yourself having the good that you desire, you will not have it. So I'm going to give you an assignment here again. It's probably about the third assignment of this afternoon already, but here again, my philosophy is a practical philosophy. When you go home this evening, before you go to sleep tonight, after you've already made yourself comfortable in your bed, get quiet and begin to visualize. Think of the good things that you want to be, to do, and to have. Think of your goals that you're trying to accomplish. And move right into that transliminal area of your mind, between the conscious and the subconscious, between the intellect and the subjective. And just see and feel yourself already being, doing, and having the good which you desire. I teach people this, and fantastic things happen. I'm thinking of a Baptist minister down in Georgia who was with me Sunday before last for our telecast, and you'll see him on the telecast here. He said the very first time that he saw our telecast in this area, I practiced visualization on the television, which briefly is what I just told you to do this evening. And he said he had been a minister for 30 years, and he had pastored churches, but his health failed on him, and he had to give up pastoring, which is really what he wanted to do. And not only that, he said he didn't have a very good experience with money, because after being married for 30-some years, he and his wife had never had a honeymoon to begin with and had never had a vacation. And so he thought, well, you know, this is strange to me, but I don't have anything to lose, so I'll try it. That night, he tried the visualization process, becoming quiet just before going to sleep, thinking of his goals, thinking of the good things that he'd like to have. And because he had never had a vacation in 30 years, it was the first thing that he wanted to have. So he saw himself on a vacation. He saw himself walking around in a resort area. And a few days later, things happened so that he actually won a vacation, cost-free. A few days later, things happened so that he could buy a home in a resort area so that he and his wife can vacation there whenever they wish. Not only that, he felt better in his body. His health began to improve, and he's back pastoring now. He's back in the Baptist ministry in Toccoa, Georgia. As a matter of fact, he should be with us on this coming Sunday at the Omni. His health has improved, and he told us on the telecast a couple of Sundays ago that all of his life he had been sickly, and he was a joke in his family, and whenever they needed some medicine, he had his own private drugstore, and they would just go into the medicine cabinet and said, let's go into Daddy's medicine cabinet and get something for whatever is wrong. But he began to see himself as a healthy person in his own mind. He began to see himself as a happy person in his own mind. He began to see himself as a loving and beloved person in his own mind as never before. He began to see himself as a successful and prosperous person. And he's prospering as never before. He's built a new parsonage, and he has built a new church in his hometown there in Toccoa, Georgia.